The red and blue lights flashed violently against the darkened highway, illuminating the silent tension inside the sleek black sedan. "Step out of the vehicle." The officer barked, hand resting on his holster. His eyes, cold and unrelenting, locked onto the driver, a black man dressed in an impeccably tailored suit, his features composed but unmistakably weary. The man didn't argue. He exhaled slowly and opened the car door, stepping out with measured control. His hands were raised slightly. Fingers spread, a learned habit ingrained over years of knowing exactly how these situations could go. "Do you know why I pulled you over?" Officer Rick Harrison smirked, his voice dripping with condescension. He was a towering figure with a buzz cut and an attitude that reeked of unchecked power. His badge gleamed under the streetlights, a symbol he had long misused. The driver tilted his head slightly. "No, officer, I don't." Rick scoffed. "License and registration." The man reached into his jacket slowly, pulling out his wallet. He handed it over, calm and unshaken. Rick snatched it, flipping it open. His eyes skimmed over the name, but he wasn't paying attention. Not yet. "Where you headed, boy?" The word boy hung in the air like a thick smog, suffocating the space between them. The man held his ground, his expression unreadable. "I wasn't aware my destination was a matter of law enforcement." Rick took a step closer, narrowing his eyes. "It is when I say it is." He flipped through the registration, pretending to examine it, though in truth, he had already made up his mind about the man standing before him. A rich black man in a fancy car? That didn't sit right with him. He'd seen their type before, always thinking they were above the law. Tonight, he'd remind this one exactly where he stood. "You got drugs in the car?" The man's jaw tensed. "No, officer." Rick chuckled. "Funny, 'cause I got a feeling you do." Before the man could protest, Rick turned to his partner, a younger officer who lingered near their patrol car, shifting uncomfortably. "Search the vehicle." "Officer, I don't consent to a search." The man's voice was steady, controlled. "But Rick?" He grinned. "Oh, you don't, huh? Well, lucky for you, I got probable cause." He turned to his partner. "Tear it apart." The younger cop hesitated, but obeyed. The man stood still, his expression hardening, but he said nothing. He knew this game. He had played it too many times before. Rick stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You're awful calm for something about to go down. I have nothing to be nervous about." Rick's grin widened. "You should." The sound of doors opening and compartments being rummaged through filled the night air. The younger officer worked quickly, overturning seats, digging through the console. Rick watched the man, waiting for panic to set in, but it never did. Then, a voice broke through the radio in Rick's patrol car. "Unit 12, dispatch here. We need an update on the governor's ETA. The mayor's expecting him in 10 minutes. Rick barely registered at first, too caught up in his own arrogance. But then, something shifted. The word slammed into him, and his smirk faltered. The governor's ETA. His eyes flicked back to the ID in his hand. And this time, he actually read the name. Governor Malcolm Hayes. His throat went dry. He looked back at the man before him. The tailored suit, the calm demeanor, the unwavering gaze. Oh no. Rick's stomach twisted into a knot. The younger officer, still rummaging through the car, paused as he overheard the dispatch. His eyes darted toward Rick, then to the governor, then back to Rick. Sir?" Rick's hands clenched. His pulse pounded in his ears. He had just illegally searched the car of the most powerful man in the state. A man who, at this very moment, could end his entire career with a single phone call. Governor Hayes watched him, and for the first time, Rick saw it, the slight, knowing smirk. The governor took a step forward, not aggressive, not threatening, just deliberate. And in that moment, the power dynamic shifted so violently it nearly knocked the breath from Rick's lungs. "Officer Harrison," the governor said smoothly, "I'd like my ID back." Rick hesitated, then quickly shoved the wallet into the governor's hand. "Governor Hayes, sir, I didn't realize." "Didn't realize?" The governor's tone was sharp now, cutting through the thick night air. Didn't realize who I was, or didn't realize you were violating my rights? Rick swallowed hard. The governor let the question hang between them, heavy and damning. The younger officer took a careful step back, wanting no part of what was about to unfold. The governor tilted his head, studying Rick as if deciding his fate. And Rick, for the first time in his career, felt small. "I assume I'm free to go?" the governor asked, though it wasn't a question. Rick nodded quickly. "Of course, sir. No problem at all." "No problem at all," the governor repeated, a trace of amusement in his voice. Interesting choice of words. He turned, walking toward his car. But just as he reached the door, he paused, looked over his shoulder, and smiled. "I hope you'll be free to go, too." Rick's stomach plummeted. The governor got into his car, started the engine, and pulled off into the night. Rick stood there, the reality sinking in like a slow, burning poison, because something told him this wasn't over. Rick stood frozen on the side of the road, his mind racing, his palms slick with sweat. The governor's words echoed in his head. "I hope you'll be free to go, too." He could feel it, his power slipping through his fingers like sand. This wasn't just some routine traffic, stop gone wrong. This was a career-ending disaster. His badge, his pension, his entire life, all dangling over the edge of a cliff. The younger officer, Peterson, shifted uncomfortably beside him. "Rick, what do we do?" Rick didn't answer. His thoughts were a jumbled mess, his body rooted to the spot. Then, almost as if the universe itself wanted to punish him, his radio crackled. "Unit 12, return to headquarters immediately. Chief want a word." Rick's stomach clenched. The chief never called officers back to the station personally. This wasn't going to be a slap on the wrist. No, this was the kind of meeting that decided futures. And Rick had a sickening feeling his was about to be decided for him. He exchanged a look with Peterson. The younger cop looked worried, but not for Rick. No, Peterson was worried about being caught in the blast radius when everything came crashing down. The drive back to the station was suffocating. Every mile brought a fresh wave of dread. When they finally pulled into the lot, Rick saw the chief waiting outside, arms crossed, face set like stone. Chief Bernard was a hard man, a career cop, a straight shooter. He had tolerated Rick's ways for years, but now there was no tolerance in his eyes, only disappointment and worse, calculation. Inside, now. Rick swallowed hard and obeyed. The chief's office was colder than usual. The blinds were drawn, the air tense. A single file sat on the desk, thick and damning. "Sit." Rick barely had time to lower himself into the chair before the chief opened the file and slid a crisp photograph across the desk. It was of Governor Hayes, standing next to the mayor, shaking hands with the police commissioner. The picture had been taken just 2 weeks ago. "This is the man you decided to harass tonight," the chief said, his voice tight with barely restrained anger. Rick opened his mouth, but the chief held up a hand. "No, you listen. I got a call from the governor's office less than 10 minutes ago." He was very calm. Rick's fingers dug into his thighs. "That's good, right?" The chief laughed, but there was no humor in it. "No, Rick, that's bad. That's real bad. See, men like Governor Hayes don't shout. They don't make a scene. They move in silence. And when they strike, you don't see it coming until you're already bleeding." Rick felt the room closing in on him. "Chief, You illegally searched his vehicle. You racially profiled the governor of this state." The chief leaned in, voice deadly quiet. "And you called him boy." Rick's throat went dry. The chief sighed, rubbing his temples. "I've covered for you before, Rick. I ignore the complaints. Looked the other way when you got a little too aggressive with people who couldn't fight back." His eyes locked onto Rick's. "But you messed with the wrong man." Silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. Then the chief leaned back. "I got 2 options here." Rick's heart pounded. "1, you resign tonight. No pension, no severance, no references. You disappear." Rick's breath hitched. "And option 2? The chief tilted his head, eyes dark with meaning. "You wait, because I promise you something's coming." Rick's blood ran cold. He shot up from the chair, his hands slamming onto the desk. You can't do this to me. I've been on the force for 15 years. You've been a liability for 15 years. The chief's voice cracked like a whip. Now sit down. Rick collapsed into the chair, his mind racing for an escape. There had to be a way out of this. Maybe the governor wouldn't follow through. Maybe it was just a bluff. But then the phone rang. The chief picked it up. Yeah, yes, sir. Understood. He hung up, his expression unreadable. Rick leaned forward. What? The chief exhaled slowly, then looked Rick dead in the eyes. You just got summoned to the governor's mansion. Rick's stomach dropped. No, this couldn't be happening. What for? He whispered. The chief stood. Guess we'll find out. The drive to the governor's mansion felt like a funeral procession. Rick sat in the back of the squad car, his hands clammy, his thoughts spiraling. What was waiting for him on the other side of those iron gates? A public humiliation? A lawsuit? Jail? By the time they arrived, a group of people was already gathered near the entrance. Rick recognized some faces, politicians, high-ranking police officials, journalists. Oh, God, this wasn't a private meeting. This was a reckoning. The door opened. A suited man gestured for Rick to step out. His legs felt like lead, but he forced himself to move, and then he saw him. Governor Hayes stood at the top of the steps, hands clasped in front of him, an unreadable expression on his face. Officer Harrison, he called out, voice smooth as silk. Come on up. We have some things to discuss. Rick's breath came in short, sharp gasps. He climbed the steps, his every movement watched by dozens of eyes. The governor extended a hand. For a moment, Rick hesitated. Then, reluctantly, he took it. Hayes smiled, but there was something chilling beneath it. Let's talk about accountability. Rick felt his world crumbling around him, and he had a feeling this was only the beginning. Rick swallowed hard as he stepped into the governor's mansion, the weight of 100 eyes pressing down on him. The grand hallway was eerily silent, except for the soft echo of his footsteps against the polished marble floor. The walls, lined with portraits of past leaders, seemed to judge him, their eyes filled with unspoken condemnation. Governor Hayes led the way, his stride confident, composed, while Rick felt like he was walking into his own execution. The journalists and officials outside had been bad enough, but now, inside this place, Hayes' domain, Rick knew he had no power here. The doors to a large study creaked open, revealing a dimly lit room with a massive mahogany desk at its center. A few other men in suits stood by, their expressions unreadable. One of them, a tall man with sharp eyes, nodded at the governor before closing the doors behind them. The moment they were alone, Governor Hayes turned, folding his arms. Take a seat, Officer Harrison. Rick hesitated but obeyed. His palms were sweaty, his nerves raw. He'd faced down criminals, broken up riots, dealt with gang members, yet nothing had ever made him feel this powerless. The governor leaned against his desk, studying Rick with quiet intensity. You understand why you're here? Rick licked his lips. Look, Answer the question. Rick clenched his fists. Because of the traffic stop. Hayes gave a slow nod. That's right. Because of the traffic stop. Because you thought you could harass me, demean me, treat me like less than a man. Rick shifted uncomfortably. I didn't know who you were. And that's supposed to make it better? The governor's voice was dangerously quiet. Because if I wasn't the governor, what would have happened that night? Officer Harrison. Rick didn't answer. He didn't have to. They both knew the truth. Hayes sighed, rubbing his temples. I've seen men like you my whole life. You hide behind that badge, thinking it makes you untouchable, that you can push people down without consequences. But you made a mistake, Officer Harrison. A very big mistake. Rick's heart pounded. Are you going to press charges? Hayes let out a humorless chuckle. Press charges? No, that's too easy. You see, the law isn't always enough. Some men, like you, only understand lessons when they're delivered a certain way. Rick's mouth went dry. What does that mean? Hayes' eyes locked onto his, and for the first time, Rick felt real fear. The governor wasn't bluffing. Whatever was coming next, it wasn't going to be some slap on the wrist. I made a few calls. Hayes said casually, spoke to some people. And wouldn't you know it, the department finally decided to review all those excessive force complaints against you, the ones that kept getting lost over the years. Rick's body stiffened. You can't do that. Oh, but I can, Hayes said smoothly. And I did. And as we speak, the mayor, the commissioner, and half the city council are reviewing every single case tied to your name. Rick's mind raced. If those cases resurfaced, his career would be over. But the governor wasn't done. And let's not forget the media. Reporters love a dirty cop story. I wonder how the public will react when they find out just how many times you cross a line. Rick's breath came in short gasps. Please, you don't understand. This job is all I have. The governor tilted his head. And what about the men you humiliated? The families you tore apart? The young boys who grew up terrified of the police because of you? His voice darkened. What did they have? Officer Harrison? Rick had no answer, because for the first time in his life, he was being forced to see it from the other side. The governor leaned in, his voice like steel. I could destroy you with a single press conference. Rick's hands gripped the armrests. Then why haven't you? Hayes studied him for a long moment before straightening up. Because I believe in justice. And justice isn't just about punishment. It's about accountability. Rick swallowed. What do you want from me? The governor's expression was unreadable. You're going to do something for me, Officer Harrison. A very public, very humiliating act of redemption. Rick's stomach twisted. What kind of act? Hayes smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You'll see soon enough. Before Rick could protest, the door opened again. The tall man from before stepped in, handing Hayes a small envelope. The governor took it, glanced inside, and nodded. Then he placed it in front of Rick. Rick hesitated before picking it up. His fingers trembled as he pulled out the single sheet of paper inside. The words on it made his blood run cold. Resignation letter. Effective immediately. Rick's head shot up. No, you can't do this. Oh, I can, Hayes said coolly, and you'll sign it. Rick shook his head, his vision blurring. If I do this, I'm finished. The governor's eyes bore into him. You were finished the moment you decided you were above the law. Rick's pulse pounded. He could feel the walls closing in. Everything he'd worked for, gone. His house, his career, his reputation. It would all crumble, unless he found a way out. And then, suddenly it hit him. He still had one last card to play. He looked up at the governor, and for the first time since walking into that mansion, he felt a flicker of control returning. You think you've won, Rick said, his voice low, measured. But you don't know everything. Hayes raised an eyebrow. Oh! Rick leaned forward, his lips curling into a small, defiant smirk. I know something. Something about you. And if I go down, I'm taking you with me. The governor's expression didn't change, but Rick could see the faintest flicker of interest, of curiosity, maybe even doubt. Rick exhaled slowly, his heart pounding. He had just bet everything on one desperate gamble. Now, it was only a matter of whether it would pay off or seal his fate for good. The room fell into a heavy silence as Rick's words hung in the air like a thick storm cloud. The governor studied him, his face unreadable. But Rick saw it. The slight flicker of hesitation, the briefest pause in Hayes' usually unshakable demeanor. Rick leaned forward, his confidence growing. That's right. I know things, Governor. You're not as untouchable as you think. The governor exhaled slowly, then walked over to the large window overlooking the city. His hands were clasped behind his back, his posture rigid. Enlighten me, Officer Harrison, he said without turning around. What exactly do you think you know? Rick licked his lips, his mind racing. He had no real dirt on the governor, but that didn't matter. It was all about making Hayes believe he did. I know about the deals, Rick said, his voice steady. The meetings behind closed doors. The things that never make it to press. He paused for effect, then added, I know about the people who wouldn't want this information getting out. Hayes chuckled. You're bluffing. Rick's jaw tightened. Am I? A long silence stretched between them. Then, finally, the governor turned, his gaze sharp, assessing. Tell me, Officer Harrison, Do you really think you can outplay me? Rick felt his pulse hammering, but he kept his expression calm. I think I have enough leverage to make you reconsider whatever is you're planning. Hayes walked back to his desk, picked up the resignation letter, and tore it in half. Let's cut the theatrics. You want to keep your badge? Rick blinked. What? I said, do you want to keep your badge? The governor's voice was controlled, deliberate, because I have an offer for you. Rick's heart pounded. This was it, his way out. I'm listening. The governor leaned in, lowering his voice. You resign quietly, but instead of leaving in disgrace, I'll have you reassigned. Different precinct. No media attention. No hearings. A fresh start. Rick stared at him, trying to gauge if this was real or just another trap. And if I refuse, Hayes smirked, then I make sure you never work in law enforcement again. Your name will be dragged through every headline. Your past sins exposed for the world to see. And trust me, the public will have no sympathy for a man like you. Rick's fingers curled into fists. He had spent years thinking he was untouchable, that no one could ever put him in check. But now he was trapped. If he accepted, he'd lose everything he'd built. But at least he'd still have a job, some form of power. If he refused, he'd be destroyed. Hayes sat back, watching him. Tick-tock, Officer Harrison. Time's running out. Rick's mind raced. He had no choice. Not really. With a heavy breath, he nodded. Fine. I'll take the deal. The governor smiled. Smart man. Rick exhaled sharply, feeling the last remnants of control slip through his fingers. He had spent his whole career stepping on others, believing he was invincible. But now, the tables had turned, and for the first time in his life, he knew what it felt like to be powerless. As he walked out of the governor's mansion, the weight of reality crushed down on him. The days of being feared were over. The badge that once gave him power now felt like a burden. And as he drove away, headlights from another car flashed in his rear-view mirror. His phone buzzed. A single message appeared on the screen. Welcome to the real world, Officer Harrison. Justice had finally been served. White officer pulls over black man, then finds out he's a governor. Like, comment, and subscribe for more stories that reveal the truth about power, justice, and the unexpected twists of life.